Who is the best player you've played with?
Definitely, Messi. Cristiano Ronaldo is the type of player working hard, but Messi is different. Messi is like, genius. It's like people is type of guy, natural,
The best player in the world for you now?
For me, I will go with Leo. Although I respect Ronaldo a lot, but Leo is just a freak.
When he was facing me, you see a small boy, because he was really, really tiny. He came straight up to me, and straight away, with the speed that he came at me and the control of the ball, you definitely, at the beginning, the first second, you said, wait, something is wrong. With him, he had the ball stuck to his feet. He was coming at a speed that is not normal. And then straight away, I fell on the floor.
He's a special one. You cannot compare with anyone. He's different, totally different. He's doing a lot of things that never will see in another players.
It's amazing. I think there is no worse. There is no worse. In my opinion, he's the best of the history, and still making difference on the pitch. And his ambition, his attitude. He's a warrior. He's absolutely the best.
Ask almost any footballer one question: who's the greatest player you've ever seen? And something strange happens. The debate disappears. Not because fans agree, but because the people who actually played against him usually do. One by one.
A mí me gustaría jugar con los mejores jugadores, así que Leo Messi es uno de los mejores del mundo y por supuesto, yo siempre lo he dicho, Messi siempre tendrá un hueco en mi equipo.
Defenders.
Because he will never do a mistake. He doesn't make mistakes. It's true, like 95% of what he does, it's the right choice. So that's why you just watch him, how he plays, his position. The way he turns his head before receiving a pass, it's like 16 times or something.
Goalkeepers.
When we play him, you notice what a player he is. There's not many situations where you come off the pitch and you go, we talk like children. I know we're not in awe of him, but you just got to be honest. Because you just see the guy wandering around, totally oblivious to the game sometimes, and then all of a sudden, bang, and he's creating something or he's scoring. Last year he put one past me. He came across the box and he dubbed it with the outside of his foot, kind of here. But he knew exactly what was going on.
Managers, teammates, even rivals, they all keep coming back to the same name: Lionel Messi.
I would tell everybody, as long as you are not Lionel Messi, you have to defend. Lionel is the only one, wait until we have the ball, give it to you, and now do what you want. Everybody else has to defend.
Now that's interesting, because football has spent almost 2 decades arguing about the greatest player of all time, Messi or Ronaldo, goals or trophies, longevity or peak. But here's what most people miss. The loudest debate has almost never come from football itself. It came from the fans. Because when the people who actually shared the pitch with Messi are asked the same question, the answers sound remarkably similar.
The best of the 4 players?
Yeah.
Lionel Messi. It's clear. It's the best of the best in the world with Cristiano. It's clear. I think that's he showed during 15 years that he had an amazing quality.
How does someone earn that kind of respect? How does a quiet boy from Rosario grow into the player that opponents openly admit they couldn't stop? And how did he turn some of football's greatest defenders into witnesses for his legacy? This isn't the story of Lionel Messi's goals. It isn't the story of his Ballon d'Ors. It's the story of why the people who knew football best had already made up their minds long before the rest of the world did. And once you hear what they had to say, you might understand why football itself seems to have already chosen its answer.
And then he's harder to get off the ball than Ronaldo. You have 3 players grabbing him, one guy grabbing his arm, one guy grabbing his shirt, one guy kicking his leg. They can't get him on the floor. He's actually harder to get on the floor, and he's 5'7". He's the greatest athlete I've ever seen in any sport ever.
Long before Lionel Messi lifted the World Cup, long before he became football's most decorated player, the people inside the game had already seen something the rest of the world hadn't. It wasn't journalists, it wasn't social media, and it definitely wasn't fan debates. It was the players who had to stop him every week. Ask almost any defender from that era about the toughest opponent they ever faced.
If not the best player in the world, ever. He'd be in the conversation, we're talking about the best players to ever play football. So he's someone, I think, there's no individual that can deal with him. It's a team effort. You've got to have 2 and 3 players around to stop him getting the ball. put people around him, stop the ball coming into him, and then when he gets the ball, then you've got to have people that are on him.
And the same name appears again and again. Lionel Messi. Not because he was the fastest, not because he was the strongest, but because he made the impossible look completely ordinary. Rio Ferdinand once admitted there was simply no way to prepare for Messi because he could beat you in so many different ways.
Messi, Xavi and Busquets, three of probably the top 6 players in the world at that time, Iniesta. So they probably had 3 of the top 6 players in the world in that area.
Gianluigi Buffon called him an alien after facing him on Europe's biggest stage.
There is from their Barcelona counterparts in that kind of position. Here's Messi, scores again!
Even players who built careers stopping the world's best attackers often described Messi as something different entirely. That wasn't media hype, that was professional respect. And here's what I think's fascinating. Footballers almost never agree on anything. Ask 10 players who the greatest striker is, you'll probably get 5 different answers. Ask about the best midfielder, the debate starts all over again. But mention Lionel Messi, and suddenly the arguments become surprisingly rare. That's because they weren't judging him through highlight videos, they were judging him from 20 yards away. They saw the things television cameras couldn't, the first touch, the balance, the way he already knew where the next pass was going before anyone else did, the way he could change direction without slowing down. The frightening part wasn't that Messi could dribble past one defender, it was that everyone on the pitch knew what he wanted to do, and nobody could stop him anyway. Pep Guardiola once described Messi as the most competitive player he had ever coached.
You know why Messi is the best player I ever seen in my life? Because he's a competitor, he's an animal.
That the Ballon d'Or had to be 2 sections, one for Messi, and after look for the other one. If you tell me the worst season of Messi is the best for the rest of the players.
While Thierry Henry admitted that training with him made him realise he was witnessing something completely different from anything he had experienced before. That's when the story started changing, because Messi wasn't just collecting goals anymore, he was collecting believers. Opponents became admirers, rivals became witnesses, legends started comparing him to players they had spent decades insisting could never be matched. And before the Ballon d'Or count exploded, before the Champions League triumphs piled up, before Argentina finally conquered the world in Qatar, football itself had already begun reaching a conclusion. But there was one problem. Outside the game, not everyone could see what the players were seeing, and that would create one of the biggest debates football has ever known. For years, Messi's greatness created a strange contradiction. The people inside football kept describing him as something they had never seen before, but outside football, the argument only became louder. Every goal was compared, every trophy was counted, every bad night was treated like evidence, and every great performance reopened the same debate: Messi or Ronaldo. At first, the comparison made sense. 2 players were dominating the same era. Both were scoring at a level football had never witnessed. Both were winning league titles, Champions Leagues and Ballon d'Ors. But then Messi started doing something different. He stopped looking like a forward. He became the entire attack. He could begin near the halfway line, escape 3 defenders, create the final pass, and still arrive inside the box to finish the move. One week he was the scorer, the next he was the playmaker. Sometimes he became both in the same 5 seconds. And this is where the story changes. Most great players force teams to adjust one part of their defense. Messi forced them to redesign everything. Managers added extra midfielders, fullbacks stopped attacking, centre-backs stepped forward and immediately regretted it. Defensive lines dropped deeper, only to give him more space to create. Opponents knew the danger was coming, they simply could not agree on where it would come from. Then came the performances that turned admiration into resignation. The dribbles against Real Madrid, the goals in Champions League finals, the nights when defenders who looked unbeatable against everyone else suddenly looked helpless. Here's what most people miss. Messi did not win the argument by talking, he rarely needed to. He won it by repeatedly making football's best players look as though they were reacting to a game he had already understood. But even after all of that, one criticism followed him everywhere. Barcelona had given him the perfect system, the perfect teammates, the perfect environment. And until he proved he could carry Argentina to the very top, some people insisted the story was still incomplete. That was when the pressure stopped being about football. It became about legacy. And what happened next nearly broke him before it completed everything. For Messi, Barcelona had become the place where everything made sense. Argentina was different. Every tournament came with hope, every defeat came with blame, and every comparison became more personal. At club level, Messi was surrounded by a system built around his strengths. With Argentina, the team kept changing. Managers changed, tactics changed, expectations did not. He was expected to be Maradona, he was expected to rescue every tournament, and whenever Argentina fell short, the criticism followed the same pattern. He had not done enough, he did not care enough, he was not the same player for his country. That became the one argument his critics returned to again and again. Then came the defeats that almost broke him. The 2014 World Cup final, back-to-back Copa America final losses, the retirement announcement. For a moment, it looked like football's greatest player might retire carrying one unanswered question forever. But then, everything changed. Messi came back, not as the player trying to prove he was the best in the world, but as a captain trying to make Argentina champions again. The Copa America finally arrived, then the Finalissima, and finally the 2022 World Cup. By the time he lifted that trophy in Qatar, one of football's oldest arguments had finally begun to disappear. The player who had conquered club football had now conquered international football too. For many people, the story was complete. But here's what makes Messi different. He didn't stop there. Most players would have walked away from international football with a perfect ending. Messi came back. At 39 years old, he led Argentina into another World Cup. Not because he needed to prove anything, because he still believed he could help his country win again. And somehow, he did. Throughout the 2026 World Cup, Messi wasn't just surviving at the highest level, he was dominating it. He finished the tournament with 8 goals and 4 assists, directly contributing to 12 goals as Argentina reached a second consecutive World Cup final. He scored in every phase of the tournament and once again became the heartbeat of Argentina's attack. Even in the semi-final against England, when he didn't score, he delivered the 2 assists that sent Argentina back to another World Cup final, reminding everyone that his influence had never depended on goals alone. Argentina would ultimately lose the final to Spain after extra time, but something remarkable happened. Nobody blamed Messi, nobody questioned his legacy. In fact, the tournament seemed to strengthen it. Because at an age when most footballers had long retired from international football, Messi was still carrying Argentina to the biggest stage the sport has to offer. Here's what I think most people miss. The 2026 World Cup wasn't about adding another trophy, it was about proving that 2022 was not the perfect ending to a fairy tale. It was simply another chapter in a career that refused to redefine greatness. The World Cup didn't make Lionel Messi the greatest player of all time. For many people, that answer had already been decided years earlier. But what 2026 showed was something even extraordinary. Even after completing football, Lionel Messi still wasn't finished writing history. By this point, Lionel Messi had already answered almost every question football could ask. He had dominated club football, he had conquered Europe, he had carried Argentina through heartbreak, pressure, and finally triumph. He had returned years later and still remained decisive on the biggest stage. But the strongest argument for Messi was never hidden inside a trophy cabinet. It came from the people who actually had to deal with him. Defenders described the same feeling. They knew what he wanted to do. They knew he would receive the ball on his left foot. They knew he would accelerate toward the space between them. And somehow, knowing all of that still did not help. Some tried to press him early. He escaped. Some dropped deeper. He created. Some surrounded him with 2 or 3 players. He passed through the space they had abandoned. That was the problem. Messi never gave defenders one correct answer. Every solution created another weakness. Goalkeepers experienced something similar. They could prepare for power, they could study penalties, they could anticipate angles, but Messi did not always finish the move the same way. Sometimes he curled the ball into the far corner, sometimes he lifted it over the goalkeeper, sometimes he waited until the final second and placed it where the goalkeeper had just moved away from. The finish often looked simple, the calculation behind it was not. And this is where the testimony becomes important. Former opponents rarely spoke of Messi as though he were merely difficult. They spoke about him as though he had changed their understanding of what was possible. World-class defenders admitted that he made them feel powerless. Legendary goalkeepers described him as a player from another level. Managers who had spent entire weeks building plans to stop him often watched those plans collapse after one touch. Pep Guardiola understood his intelligence. Jose Mourinho understood the danger of allowing him space. Jurgen Klopp understood how quickly he could punish a team. Great coaches disagreed about football constantly. On Messi, their language often sounded remarkably similar. Then there were the teammates. Thierry Henry had already played with some of the greatest footballers in history before arriving at Barcelona. Ronaldinho had been the best player in the world. Xavi and Andres Iniesta understood the game at a level very few could match. Neymar had enough talent to become the center of almost any team. Yet each of them eventually recognized the same thing. Messi was different. Not louder, not physically dominant, not interested in performing leadership for the cameras. He simply understood the game faster than everyone around him. In training, that difference became impossible to ignore. A space would appear for half a second. Messi had already seen it. A defender would lean in one direction. The ball was already moving the other way. A passing lane looked closed. He found another one nobody else had noticed. Here is what I find most fascinating. Most legends become larger once their careers are over. Their failures fade, their best moments become mythology. Messi became mythology while the people competing against him were still trying to win. That almost never happens. His rivals were not waiting for history to judge him, they were judging him in real time, and the verdict kept repeating itself. The best they had faced, the most complete, the hardest to stop, the player who could decide a match without appearing to force anything. Of course, football will always have debate. Some will choose Cristiano Ronaldo, others will choose Maradona, Pelé, or another legend from a different generation. That debate is part of what makes the sport meaningful. But this documentary was never about forcing one answer. It was about understanding why so many of the people closest to the game keep giving the same one. Because fans judge football through emotion, statistics judge it through numbers, trophies judge it through results, but players judge it through experience. They remember the moment they realized the plan wouldn't work, the moment they watched Messi move through a defense that had prepared specifically for him, the moment a match changed before anyone understood how. That is why Messi's legacy feels different. It was not built only from what he won. It was built from what he made the greatest football minds admit. They could study him, they could surround him, they could foul him, they could wait for age to slow him down, but for more than 20 decades, none of it completely solved the problem. And by the time the final arguments were being made, football's most credible witnesses had already delivered their answer. Lionel Messi had not simply played the game better than almost anyone, he had made the game itself speak for him. So, who is the greatest footballer of all time? Fans will probably keep debating that forever, But after listening to the people who played with Messi, coached him, and tried to stop him, the answer seems a lot less complicated. Because the strongest case for Lionel Messi was never made by social media, it was never made by statistics, and it was never made by his fans. It was made by football itself. And when the people who know the game best keep giving the same answer, maybe it's worth listening.